Now, the next topic I want to talk about, just want to be aware of the fact that it may be something that has impacted on you personally. So I just want to, what I'm going to talk about for the next 20 minutes is the impact of trauma on people's lives. So it's quite significant, I think, particularly in this area. Again, there's been a lot of trauma that's been experienced. So again, it's back to this mantra of don't judge behind every person. There's a reason why they are. So I don't know if anyone saw this program on Australian Story a little while ago, just recently. Do you watch Australian Story? You can, if you want to, you can watch it on iView. And it's about a young man called Vincent Shin. And his family, his dad and mum, came over in a boat. And they experienced a great deal of trauma as a result. You saw it?
Yeah.
A great deal of trauma as a result of that. As a result of that trauma his father experienced, he actually had an alcohol problem. Developed a very severe alcohol problem, which led into a lot of domestic violence. So there's a reason. But Vincent then grew up in a family that experienced a lot of violence. And until he got to a point of 17, when he stood up to his dad and said, "That's it, that's enough." And his father said, "That's it, you're out. You're not my son anymore." So, but the whole time he was going through school was the time he was trying to protect his mum, trying to get support his mum, trying to break the fights up. And when he then was at school, he was constantly in trouble. He was a class clown. He was chucked out of school. He was not concentrating. He was not listening. And his final VCE score was less than 30. Which means epic fail. Epic fail. After that, it's really a TAFE good news story in actual fact, because after that happened, after his dad left, and they, which again was another trauma in itself, the family re-established and settled down a little bit. He then went to TAFE, and when he went to TAFE, he studied legal studies, I believe, legal studies, and he actually did really well, and he really liked it, and he studied very well. In fact, he did so well. He was encouraged to go on to Melbourne University to become a lawyer. So for a student who got less than 30 for his VCE and was always in trouble, he went on to be a lawyer, and he now is one of 3 in Melbourne who is a school lawyer. He actually works in a school to support and assist students about their rights in schools and about domestic violence situations, etc. So a really amazing, inspirational story. So if you're on iView and you want to look at Australian Story, I just thought, this exemplifies a lot of what we see. But we see the troubled child, we see the troubled person. So if we look then what trauma is when you've got psychic trauma occurs when there's a sudden, unexpected or overwhelming, intense emotional blow or a series of blows that assaults the person from the outside. And they are external, but they quickly become incorporated into the mind. So, put differently, trauma's not the thing that happened, but it's the effect left within us by our experiences. And everyone can respond differently to a situation for lots of different reasons and how they get affected. So, it also can be experienced trauma or observed. And the latest research is saying that if you observe domestic violence, that's the same as being a victim of it. So you are a victim of it. So, which can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder. And it actually changes your brain. So this is a scan of a normal 3-year-old's brain, we can see here, and a 3-year-old child who's suffered extreme neglect. You'll see their brain is smaller. There's a whole lot of shadows on the brain and a whole lot of gaps and holes and shadows all over the place, and shrinkage. See the shrinkage of the area? So one thing to know is if you have students who've been experiencing trauma in their lives, they will invariably have a learning disorder. Because guess what's happened to the circuitry board? So trauma and learning disorders tend to go hand in hand, for adults or for children. So it's actually a biological thing. So it impacts that entire person. It's about the way they learn, about the way they see the world, the way they remember things, and the way they make sense of things. things. So it impacts us physically, spiritually, emotionally, in every aspect. And people who've had repeated experience can become unusually sensitive, so that what is even just a minor threat can trigger a physical, emotional, or physical response. And the important thing to learn, which I found fascinating to learn, is that it's actually a biological response and it's built in. So they can't control it. What I'm going to do, keep it simple, stupid brain theory here. Your brain stem is at the bottom. That is how you breathe, you walk. You don't have to think about what you're doing, okay? Animal part of your brain, I'll call it. Then we're going to miss this one because I can't say the word, but this is really about your senses, okay? This part is called the limbic system, which is your emotions. And this part here, the neocortex, is here. That's your thinking, your ability to think, okay? So, the way the brain architecture works is that animal part of the brain is controlling this sort of stuff, body temperature, heart rate, and blood pressure, just the stuff you don't even have to think about. Then as it comes through, it goes to the limbic system, that blue part of the brain, which starts affecting things like your emotional reactivity, your sexual behaviour, your arousal, response to things like that. And then as it goes up and up and up, comes the front part of the brain, which deals with the concrete thought, abstract thought. What are we doing in a classroom? This bit? We're doing this bit. So the complexity of function shifts through as the brain, but it shifts through that way. So, your biology of you as a human is designed to protect yourself, and that's where you would know about the fight, flight, or freeze. So if you need to protect yourself, you're either going to get cranky, you're going to be avoidant or anxious, or you're going to detach, disengage. That's what the normal defensive responses to a threat are. So, just like you take your pulse. See what your pulse is. How long do you have to take it for to get for a minute?
Usually take it for half a minute, not
Yeah, two. Just go half a minute. Okay. So you've got so is everyone's pulse rate reasonably calm? Reasonably calm?
Serenity
Okay.
now.
What I want to show you here is, can you see if I stand there? Okay. The function of your heart rate is dependent on the state you are in. Okay. So the brain area here is your cortex, okay? The thinking part of your brain is where you do your abstract reasoning, where you do your learning. To be learning, you need to have a calm heart rate. It needs to be about 60 to 90. So you learn. If we shift across to here, the limbic system, that's that middle part of the brain, the blue bit, that's your emotions, is where you can do concrete, this and that. Concrete thinking. The heart rate's higher, it's on alert. Then we shift to here, when the limbic system is loading up, that's when we start to see impulsive and aggressive behaviour, and the heart rate is on fear. Like what you would feel like you've just nearly had a car accident. Got the adrenaline shooting through your body. So here we can have learning in extended and future. We can remember things. Here we can remember things for days. Here we can remember things for minutes. Have you ever taught something to a student and they've completely forgotten everything about it the next time you see them? They can only remember for days if they've got them. And seconds is when you're in that automatic, reflexive, and there's terror when it's really high. Students who have got PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, walk into your class with their heart rate up here. And that is why they can be responding, they can react so quickly, or they can go so quickly. So if we start down here, you've got a student who comes into class and they're friendly and cooperative, and they can respond to instructions, so they're calm. then often here they start to swear, or they get a bit agitated, or they're irritable, or they come in like this. They might come in like this. Often what we do is we sort of ignore that behaviour, and we just think, and just let them keep going. But this is actually the time to address it. This is the time to refocus it, to give them that this and then, to say we're going to do this for 10 minutes and then you can play on your computer, we're going to do this and then you can get your phone, or use some coping strategies. Basically what you're needing your students to do is calm down. And saying calm down doesn't help. Calm down. They've got to look for ways to self-soothe. And it can be different for everyone. For some of them it can be like little fidget balls. Any of you have little fidget balls on your table? They can just play with a little bit. See, there you go, little fidget balls or little squishy things. Calm down. Music as they come into the classroom that they've chosen, just to create a calm learning environment. Because once we get past that, then you start to get that oppositional defiant behaviour, where they will refuse reasonable requests, which might need one-to-one support. But then we get to, when they're starting to damage things, and we've got to get someone else in, or to a clinical range of peak where we've just got to remove them and do crisis management plan. But if we know they can't actually help it, it's the way their brain's protecting themselves. And they're so accustomed, you actually get addicted to it. They get addicted to the drama. So we've got to look at ways in which we can basically calm them down. I mean, again, we've got to remember we're teachers and trainers, we're not psychologists, we're not counsellors. But if we can understand that's what's happening for many students, it can actually help us manage an environment. But some students actually need to peak before they can calm down. When they're really highly alert, they actually have to crack it. And that's when sometimes you can ask them to go for a walk and run outside, perhaps. Some escalate very quickly and there's not enough time to redirect them. But some students, you can connect them with some of the positive relationship. They're the ones you really, really have to work hard on with a positive relationship, so they trust you. And some students will just always hover. They're just constantly fidgety, uptight, and that's where they'll always be. But the key thing to know is that learning's only going to take place when your students feel calm and they feel safe. And that's why building that safe learning environment is so important. So I guess again, this is a short picture on trauma-informed practice. It's another whole day. And I've been learning a lot from a good friend of mine who's really expert at this. But I guess my key message for today to create an engaging classroom is to be kind. Because everyone's fighting a hard battle and you just don't know. They might look like just horrible human beings, but there's always a reason, I think. But this is one simple strategy. It's called the PACE model. And I'm sure many of you do this, because I can just tell there's so many experienced practitioners in this room. Is just for a start, make a joke. If they're going to be rude, they're going to fart, you make a joke. Or you ignore it. Accepting it. If you find it really hard to work here today, maybe you'd like to work in a different place. I would say, is there something I can do to help you? Being curious. I wonder why you don't like getting started today. Or just showing that empathy. A summarising comment that reflects that student feeling in an empathetic response. Like you seem really annoyed when I asked you to get on with your work, Because interesting thing about this theory is that when you name an emotion, you claim it. Often students have no idea. Their heart is going, their pulse is going, they feel agitated and they don't understand why. They have a really lack of self-awareness. So actually naming it, naming the emotion, is a powerful first step. So you seem very upset today. No, I say I'm not upset. I'm just really annoyed. Okay, you're really annoyed today. What are you annoyed about? So you're sort of unpeeling it. These are cards from St. Luke's Innovative Resources. Like it says creative. I used to always chuck them on the ground. Frustrated, anxious, lonely, disgusted, assertive. And I would just, at the start of the day, not always, just chuck them all on the ground. And we'd start in a circle for 5 minutes and say, pick up a card that says how you feel today. But if you name the emotion, you claim the emotion and you start to shift it.